The Odyssey wasn't the most advanced ship in the galaxy. It wasn't even the fastest or the most well-armed. In fact, by the standards of most spacefaring species, it was barely fit to travel. Yet, against all odds, this ship, a patched-up, battle-scarred relic of humanity's desperate fight for survival, would go down in history as the vessel that defied everything. Its mission was impossible. The alien armada known as the Exile fleet had conquered or destroyed every planet in their path. Their technology was incomprehensible, their strategies flawless, their forces seemingly infinite. No species had been able to resist them. Earth was next, and humanity stood on the brink of annihilation. The United Terran Federation, battered and broken, had pinned all its hopes on a single plan, a suicide mission that no one believed would work. The Odyssey was to infiltrate the heart of the Exile fleet and deliver a weapon so dangerous it was forbidden even by humanity's own desperate standards, a device that could rip a hole in spacetime, destroy entire systems, and hopefully, in one devastating strike, turn the tide of the war. Yet everything about the ship was wrong. The Odyssey's crew was a ragtag group of soldiers, engineers, and scientists, hastily thrown together in the last days of the war. Most had never seen combat. They had lost family, friends, and entire cities to the exiles. There was fear in their eyes, but more than that, there was a fierce determination, the human spirit that had refused to be snuffed out, even when the odds were stacked against them. Captain Elias Monroe, the leader of the mission, was a man who had seen more battles than any commander should. His face was etched with the scars of past failures and personal losses, but his resolve was unshakable. He knew what had to be done, and if the mission meant the end of his life, so be it. For him, there was no other choice but to succeed. The ship itself was barely holding together. The Odyssey had once been a proud warship, but years of combat had left it battered and in disrepair. Its hull was patched with scavenged alien materials, its power core on the brink of failure, and its weapons systems obsolete. The navigation systems worked only because of hastily made repairs, and even the life support system had a habit of shutting down at the worst possible times. Yet somehow, the Odyssey flew. As it tore through hyperspace, evading exile patrols and navigating through uncharted regions of the galaxy, the crew encountered dangers they couldn't have anticipated, space storms that threatened to rip the ship apart, alien predators lurking in the void, and betrayal from within their own ranks. Every step of the journey pushed the Odyssey to its breaking point, but every challenge they faced only made them more determined. The Exile fleet was relentless. They hunted the Odyssey, bombarding it with wave after wave of attacks. Their ships were faster, stronger, and more advanced, but humanity had something the exiles didn't understand: the ability to adapt, to take what was broken and make it stronger, to refuse to give up, even when the universe seemed to have turned against them. When the Odyssey finally reached the heart of the Exile fleet, it was on the verge of collapse. The hull was riddled with breaches, the engines sputtering, and half the crew wounded or dead, but they had made it. Against all odds, they had come to the place where no other species had ever dared. Captain Monroe stood on the bridge, staring at the alien mothership, a massive fortress of steel and energy that dwarfed Odyssey. It was an impossible target, and yet, here they were. "This is it," he said, his voice laced with finality. "No going back." The weapon was primed, the countdown already ticking. The crew, bloodied and exhausted, gathered around their captain, knowing they might not survive the coming moments, and yet, none of them hesitated. "We're not doing this for Earth," Monroe continued. "We're doing this for every species the exiles crushed, for every planet they turned to ash, for humanity, and for the future." The weapon fired. In that instant, space itself seemed to shatter. The weapon's energy tore through the exile mothership, collapsing it in on itself. The resulting shockwave rippled across the fleet, tearing ships apart, creating a cascade of destruction that no amount of alien technology could stop. And the Odyssey, battered and broken, slipped away into the void. The Exile fleet was shattered. The tide of the war turned. Humanity had won, not through superior strength or advanced technology, but through sheer determination. Against all odds, The Odyssey and its crew had defied everything. No one ever knew what happened to the ship after that final battle. Some say it was destroyed in the chaos. Others claim it disappeared into the far reaches of space, a ghost ship carrying the last survivors of its impossible mission. But the legend of the Odyssey lived on, a testament to the indomitable human spirit, a reminder that even when everything is wrong and all seems lost, there is always hope, and sometimes, against all odds, that hope is enough to change the fate of the universe. Years passed since the Odyssey had vanished into the void. The war with the exiles was over, and the galaxy had begun to rebuild from the ashes left by their devastation. Humanity, once on the brink of extinction, had emerged not just as survivors but as symbols of defiance. They had fought back, not with the most powerful technology, but with a tenacity and spirit that no species could replicate. The Odyssey became a legend, whispered in the dark corners of spaceports, recounted in war memorials, and taught in the academies of every spacefaring race. The ship that should never have succeeded, and yet did, the crew that faced impossible odds and changed the course of history. But the galaxy was far from peaceful. The collapse of the exile fleet had created a power vacuum, and new threats emerged to fill the void. Pirates, warlords, and remnants of the exiles, once mighty forces, preyed on vulnerable colonies, and with the political tension between species high, many feared that another galaxy-wide conflict was inevitable. That's when the Odyssey resurfaced. It began as rumors and confirmed reports of a strange ship appearing in battle-scarred sectors of space. Pirates would attack defenseless cargo ships, only to be obliterated by an ancient warship that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Entire exile factions, still clinging to the remnants of their once great empire, vanished without a trace. Each time, witnesses would describe the same thing: a battered human ship, with scars from 100 battles, moving with a ghostly silence through the stars. Many dismissed these stories as myth, nothing more than wishful thinking. But those who knew the truth, who had fought in the final days of the war, knew that the Odyssey could never be counted out. One such believer was Admiral Leela Torrens of the United Terran Federation. She had been a young officer when the Exile War had ended, but she had served under Captain Monroe himself. She remembered the day the Odyssey had left on its impossible mission, and she had been one of the few who believed it could return. Now, as reports of the ship continued to surface, Torrens couldn't shake the feeling that Monroe and his crew had unfinished business. "Admiral, you're not seriously considering this?" asked Commander Jax, her second-in-command, as they stood in the Federation's command center, staring at a holographic map filled with the locations of the sightings. "It's been years. The Odyssey is a ghost story." "I saw them leave, Commander," Torrens replied, her gaze distant. "They were the best of us. If anyone could survive out there, it's them." "But why would they stay hidden all this time?" Jax pressed. "Why not return?" Torrens sighed. She didn't have the answer to that question, but deep down, she knew there was a reason. "We owe it to them to find out. Prepare a recon fleet. We're going after them." The mission to find the Odyssey began in secret. Torrens knew the political implications of chasing after a ghost. Many within the Federation's leadership would dismiss it as a waste of resources, or worse, a sign of desperation, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy needed the Odyssey now more than ever. Their search led them deep into uncharted space, to places even the exiles had avoided during their reign of terror. They followed the trail of destroyed pirate ships, abandoned outposts, and cryptic messages left in the debris of battle. Each clue brought them closer to the truth, and each step revealed more about the legend that had grown around the Odyssey. It was in a forgotten system, hidden in the shadow of a dying star, that they found it. The Odyssey was waiting. It was not the broken, battered ship of the stories. A vessel that appeared before them was fully restored, its hull gleaming with alien technology that no one had ever seen. It was the same ship, and yet it had evolved, as if it had been reborn in the darkness, preparing for something far greater than a single war. Admiral Torrens watched in awe from the bridge of her own ship as the Odyssey appeared on their sensors. "Hail them," she ordered, her voice steady despite the emotion welling up inside her. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, The communication channel opened, and a familiar voice spoke. "This is Captain Elias Monroe of the Odyssey. You found us." Torrance' breath caught in her throat. "Captain Monroe, it's been so long. We thought. You thought we were gone," Monroe interrupted, his voice calm but filled with a weight that told her everything she needed to know. "But we've been preparing. The exiles were never the real threat. They were just the beginning." Torrance's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" Monroe's voice grew quieter, almost a whisper. "There's something out there, Admiral. Something worse than the exiles. We've seen it. We've been fighting it." Torrance's mind raced, but Monroe continued before she could respond. "The Odyssey wasn't just a weapon to stop the exiles. It's the only hope we have against what's coming. We've stayed hidden because we had to. But now it's time for humanity to face the real enemy." The stars seemed to grow colder around them, and Torrance felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. "Captain Monroe," she said, her voice resolute, "whatever's out there, we'll face it together. The Odyssey isn't alone anymore." Monroe's voice carried a quiet determination. "No, Admiral, it never was." And with that, the Odyssey moved forward, leading them into the darkness. Against all odds, the ship that had defied everything was ready for its next battle, a battle that would decide the fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. And this time, nothing would stop it. The reunion of the Odyssey and the United Terran Federation fleet was only the beginning. Admiral Torrance knew that if Captain Monroe was right, and there was a threat worse than the exiles lurking in the depths of space, they would need more than just a legendary ship to survive. They would need to unite the galaxy. As Torrance's fleet accompanied the Odyssey back to Federation space, they passed through sectors scarred by years of war and conflict. Remnants of the exile fleet still prowled the outer reaches, and pirate bands, emboldened by the collapse of order, preyed on the weak. But the sight of the Odyssey, once thought lost forever, ignited a spark of hope. The first call came from the Alarian Collective, a species that had been humanity's closest allies during the Exile War. They had lost much in the conflict and had been slow to recover. But when word spread that the Odyssey had returned, the Alarian Council sent an immediate request to meet with Torrance and Monroe. Aboard the Alarian flagship, Monroe and Torrance Saturday across from the Alarian High Chancellor, an imposing figure with sapphire skin and calculating eyes. The Chancellor's voice was steady as they spoke. "We believed your ship to be lost," the Chancellor said, their gaze fixed on Monroe. "Yet here you are, with tales of a new threat. What exactly are we facing, Captain?" Monroe leaned forward, his face grim. "Something ancient, older than anything we've encountered. We first came across their presence in deep space while hunting the last remnants of the exiles. They called themselves the Revenant beings that once ruled the galaxy. Long before any of us ever set foot among the stars, they vanished, leaving behind ruins and myths. But they're not gone. They're waking up." The Chancellor narrowed their eyes. "Waking up?" "Yes," Monroe replied. "We've already engaged their scouts, and they're far more dangerous than anything the exiles had. We don't know how many are out there, but we've seen enough to know that if they fully rise, it won't just be humanity that falls, it'll be everyone." The Chancellor's expression softened, replaced by a look of quiet contemplation. "If this is true, the Collective will stand with you. But you must understand, Captain, the galaxy is fractured. Since the end of the Exile War, every species has been licking their wounds, fortifying their borders. The trust we once shared has been eroded by years of suspicion." Monroe nodded. "I understand, but we don't have a choice. We need to unite now, or the Revenants will wipe us out one by one." The Chancellor remained silent for a moment, then slowly inclined their head. "I will call for an emergency council of the allied species. We will see if unity can still be achieved in this fractured galaxy. But, Captain Monroe, know that many will not be easily convinced." "I'll convince them," Monroe said, his voice filled with steely resolve. Torrance, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "We'll need more than words. The Odyssey will stand as proof of what we face. We'll gather as many as we can, and show them we have a chance to fight back if we do it together." And so, the call went out across the stars. The Allied Species Council convened in the neutral zone, on the planet of Garrus Prime, a planet untouched by war and known for its impartial governance. It was here, in a massive space station orbiting the serene planet, that the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful species gathered. The Alarians were present, as were the Vathan Empire, the enigmatic Sarai, and even the once hostile Ithrians, who had been neutral during the Exile War, but now faced the same impending doom as the rest. The tension in the council chamber was palpable. Old grievances simmered beneath the surface as the representatives of dozens of species took their seats. Hushed whispers filled the air, with many of the leaders casting skeptical glances at the human delegation. Monroe stood at the center of the chamber, facing an audience that, despite their differences, shared one thing in common: the fear of extinction. "Some of you don't trust humanity," Monroe began, his voice carrying through the room with quiet authority. "Some of you probably think we don't belong here, that our wars are our own doing, and that we should face the consequences alone. But if there's one thing humanity has proven, it's that we don't go down without a fight." The room was silent as Monroe continued. "I've been to the edge of the galaxy. I've seen what's coming. The revenants are real. They're out there, and they're not going to care which species is strongest or which has the most territory. They'll come for all of us." A holographic image flickered to life behind him, displaying the revenant ships, massive, angular, and pulsing with an eerie light. Even in holographic form, they seemed to exude an unnatural, predatory presence. "This is one of their smaller vessels," Monroe said. "We barely survived our encounter with it, and that's just the beginning." Whispers erupted across the chamber, but Monroe pressed on. "The Odyssey has faced them, and we've learned one thing: if we don't stand together, we will fall alone. The Revenants have technology we can't fully comprehend, but we can't adapt. We always have. Humanity will fight them, with or without the rest of you, but together, we have a chance." Torrance watched from her seat as the room erupted into debate. Some of the representatives immediately began arguing against cooperation, citing old conflicts and mistrust. Others seemed swayed by Monroe's words, knowing that they could not afford to face an enemy like the Revenants alone. The debate continued for hours, with tensions rising and falling like the tides. Torrance's heart pounded with anticipation. Every minute that passed without agreement felt like another step toward disaster. Finally, the Alarian High Chancellor stood. "We have faced impossible odds before," the Chancellor said, casting a glance at Monroe, "and against those odds, we have prevailed. The Alarian Collective will stand with humanity against this threat. We will commit our fleets to this cause." The room grew quieter as the other leaders exchanged glances. One by one, representatives stood, pledging their support. The Vathan Empire, the Sarai, the Tiori Coalition, and others followed the Alarians' lead, but not all.